Hi there, I'm Clifford Bates, and I'm going to welcome you to a new series. My new series is going to be looking at John Locke's Second Treatise of Government. Well, this I use the Croft editions, always doing it. We're going to be paying attention only to the second treatise, not the two treatises. Even though in the link I will recommend, you can get editions of this. You can get two treatises together for 8. We're not going to be focused on the first treatise, which deals with his critique of Richard Filmer and his work Patriarcha. Um, the second treatise by Locke, this is technically it was anonymous. It was written anonymously. Only after his death that it was claimed that he wrote it. Um, Locke is this is the claim of this is that this is a kind of a piece of work of the Glorious Revolution of 1688, where the Whigs, the liberals or the Whigs, as they were called, who failed in an early attempt by Mammoth, the bastard child of Charles II, to overthrow the Catholic King Charles, James II, the Stuart king, the brother of Charles, who, because Charles dies without any legitimate children being able to be his heir, um, therefore James, his brother, becomes king, and James has all these daughters. But what happens is that the famous baby in the bathtub or in the saucepan, where his second wife all of a sudden, as miraculously gives birth to a boy, and this would throw up the Protestant. And of course the Jesuits around James are gonna ensure that it's a Catholic, and because remember his daughters are Protestant only because his brother forced them to. Okay, so the Glorious Revolution happens. Some people argue this book is a basically party political of justifying or legitimizing the revolution. This book, the second treatise, is a very important book because we can say it. Some people argue that it is the book that actually gives the foundation of liberalism. Some argue that it begins at Hobbes already. It's a whole debate about this, whether what degree. Locke was very much tied to the liberal power holder Shaftesbury, who was the principal leading of the Whig faction. In fact, was very much beyond Monmouth's attempt at seizing power, and had to flee England to avoid the wrath of James, and went to the Netherlands and operated in France and Netherlands, and this was Locke, who was his patron and his teacher of his children, because most philosophers or thinkers or things. Locke was himself a doctor, no, trained in medicine, but also trained, as a broadly speaking, a man of knowledge, a philosopher in this sense. Very much tied to the new scientific methods of science and uh, 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 physics and these things. But he was also, knowledgeable of these things. But as a political person, part of this liberal thing, he brought his and this whole argument to what degree he was influenced by Hobbes. This has been more and more discovered by recent discoveries of letters and things in the past couple of years of the thing long lost, forgotten and lost, of the connections of Hobbes to Locke. I mean, by Locke's use and knowledge of Hobbes, because there's always the argument that did he know Hobbes? A lot of people arguing that. By looking at the second treatise, this is the book that really shapes the American Revolution, American political thinking. This is also the book of very much libertarians in that sense, the classical liberal tradition and libertarianism in that sense, in the 20th century sense of this idea of this concept. Locke, plays a very important role of defending free government and the right of government by consent. It plays a role in Jefferson's writing of the Declaration of Independence. Some people argue. There's a debate about this. What about the second treatise in general? Um, it is composed of 19 chapters. Okay. It also begins. It has a structure of, each chapter is divided into sections. This weird thing here, right here, the section sign. Um, the sections are numerically sequenced and doesn't break after every chapter. They're not broken up again. So it starts. Therefore, it starts at one, and chapter one is the first. Section one begins the thing, but it ends on section 243. So, these 243 sections are divided in 19 chapters. Now, they're not even. Okay? Some chapters are very short. Chapters like the shortest chapters are like 2 paragraphs, and that is number 10, 10th thing, 10th chapter. Another thing is 4 chapter 4. The longest chapter is the last, okay, on dissolution of government, of the question of revolution, right? And the dissolution and why governments can be dissolved, hence revolution, the right to revolution in that sense. The next longest chapter, the second longest chapter, is the eighth chapter, which is the beginnings of political society, right? The third largest chapter is chapter 5 on property, and then the fourth largest chapter is on paternal power. Um, the fifth largest chapter gives us, where's the fifth? It's on 16, which is on conquest. Um, the sixth is on chapter 7, which is on civil and political society. The seventh, this is the seventh only has one chapter. It's chapter 2. The seventh length is chapter 2 on the state of nature. On the eighth longest, this is chapter 18 on tyranny. The ninth, well, the problem with the ninth is that this is there are 2 chapters. These are the ninth is chapter more than 2. I think there's 2. Yeah, 2. Chapter 10, 13, and 14, both of 10 sections. Um, Number 10, the 10th longest is a number 9 with 9. 9 is 9 on chapter 9, which again, 9 is what? On the ends of political government. It's the 10th one. The 10th is number 9. The 11th is a number 3, which on the state of war. The 12th is what? The 12th is, oh yeah, right after it. Um, the second 12th is the second smallest, the fourth, with 3 chapters, and which is on slavery, and then the 13th is the least, only 2, and this is chapter 17 on usurpation. So that's the structure of and the length of the chapters and structures of this. We start again. Chapter 1 doesn't have a name. It does 2 things. It summarizes what he argued in the first treatise, the first chapter. We'll talk about this when we look at the first chapter. Chapter 2, state of nature. Chapter 3, state of war. Chapter 4, slavery. Chapter 5, property. Very long article. Chapter 6, paternal power. Chapter 7 is political and civil society. Chapter 8, beginning of political society. Chapter 9, the ends of political society and government. Chapter 10 is the forms of commonwealth. Chapter 9 is the extents of legislative power. Chapter 12 is the legislative, executive, and federative powers of government. Then number 10 is, sorry, 13, chapter 13 is of the subordination of powers of the Commonwealth. Then chapter 14 is the prerogative. Chapter 15, paternal and political despotical powers considered together, kind of review of those things. Return. Then chapter 16 on conquest, 17 usurpation, 18 tyranny, and last but not least, a 19th the dissolution of government, which includes the right to revolution. So this is the thrust of what we're going to be doing. Share it with a friend. Say hi. What's this? If you want to follow me on social media, you can follow me below. But this is going to be a general introduction, saying hi, so I'm not going to say much. And